So, I've got to answer some questions since I've been using this AORUS FO48U monitor for a little bit. Wanted to kind of revisit what I've got going on with that and my thoughts on it. And I figured, why not start in the dark? So anyway, I waited until it was night. It was pitch black outside because I didn't want the sunlight to interfere in any of this. So let's first start with my camera settings. I am using an ISO 3200. I am using a shutter speed of 125th a second, and the f-stop is set to 11. So we're quite a ways down. I wanted a pretty good depth of field for this. Yeah, anyway, so here's the lighting situation. I've got these 4 overhead lights. There's 1, 2, 3 back there in the far corner, and then 4 over there. They are the standard yellowish color, like old incandescents. They're not incandescent, they're LEDs, but whatever. And I have the main ceiling fan, it's 3 bulbs, and they are daylight spectrum, and I think they're like 4 watts each. So, you know, not super bright or anything, but bright enough. And then I brought up the studio lights. These are normally umbrellas, but and there's the other one over in the corner. But I took the umbrellas off because I wanted as much room lighting as possible, just so that I could keep the ISO lower, since obviously we're not shooting outside. I'm not going to be using flashes or anything like that. Okay, so here's the deal. The question that I have to answer first off from one of the comments I got is about reflectivity in the monitors when you're using an application or gaming or anything like that. So what I figured I would do is come in, kind of look at the 2 monitors side by side and do a comparison. So I have this 65-inch Samsung, I believe it's the RU7000 or something like that. Guess I should have looked this up beforehand. RU7300, that's what it is. And it is a 65-inch curved screen monitor. This is the one we're looking at right now. And then this is the 48-inch AORUS FO48U. And I don't think I can get far enough back to get them side by side, but yeah, don't have enough room in here. 85mm lens, gotta love it. Anyway, so if I go in a little bit, we'll kind of look at the reflection. Okay, so here you can see, if I move a little bit over, those are the ceiling fan lights. Literally those right there. That's what we're seeing in the AORUS. And you can see that they're very, very interferative with the image that's on the screen, but it's at a very sharp point. It's almost like looking in a mirror. It's very highly reflective. Now, if I go over to the Samsung screen, and let's see if I can get those. There they are. Okay, so now you can see the same ceiling light. Back over here as a reference. This and that is in the 65-inch. And you can see this is much worse. So what I've noticed with these 2 screens, let me back up a little bit here. The light is actually more distractive in the regular screen. And this is the same sort of effect that I've had with any monitor that I've had in the past, the lights that are reflecting in it, for example, if we look down here at the desk, I've got some other lighting and such going on down here. If we just look here in the big 65-inch, you can see the bottle is clearly reflected in that screen. And then this is just a regular screen. You know, it's, you know, any regular computer monitor that you're going to get, this is basically what you're going to get for objects reflected in it. And you can see the green bottle being reflected. You can see the backlighting being reflected in the panel. As I get it, I'm like way over to the side of it right now. See if I can, yeah. So you can see, you know, it's pretty reflective when you get over to the side of it. When you're straight on though, it's all about what's coming in at that angle when you're playing a game. Let me get down here at about the level you would be. So this is one of those ceiling lights, the one near the doorway, and you can see the issue with it. You see the hot point in the middle where the primary reflection is, and then there are striations away from it, and it's like this on all of it. There's one of those softbox lights, or the umbrella lights. As you can see, it has a huge starburst coming off of it. Go back to the ceiling fan lights, you can see the starburst is going off of those. And if I do the exact same thing over here, let's see, there is one of the umbrella lights. You can see it's very clearly visible. You can even see the room light, or the recessed light there with it. You can even make out details, and it's not smeared very much. There's a little bit of a halo, but that's it. And of course, with the ceiling fan light, you get that same little bit of a halo around it. You can see a lot of the detail reflected. You know, you can make out the fan blades and the glass protective globes around them, but there's not a lot of smearing. So the real deal with this is, it's not so much of a distraction as long as you're aware of where your room lights are. It's really not that big of a deal. So, I mean, that would be really the biggest thing I would have to say. As far as are, you know, the light reflections in the room a problem, I would actually have to say no. For the Samsung, it was always a big issue. It even got to the point to where this light here above the entryway into the room, I actually would disconnect it the majority of the time, because the reflection in the big 65-inch was so bad that I actually could not work around it. So I had to actually disconnect that light. For this, really, it's not an issue. The only light I ever have an issue with is the ceiling fan light. And you can see it's a group of really hot spotlights basically that are interfering directly in the image. And, you know, that's a simple matter of, I just go shut that light off and leave everything else on, and that's not a problem. So anyway, that pretty much sums it up for the lights in the room of reflection a problem. It's, of course, got to do with the positioning of the lights in the room. If you have to have lights on in the room, as far as brightness goes, let me refresh this because it's been static for quite a while. Sorry for being zoomed in so far. All right, so here we are looking at the AORUS again. You have this little bright LED panel that I'm using to light up this bottle. The lights in the background on the ceiling fan, and the lights from the panel, it's very, very bright. I have had absolutely no issues whatsoever. I even have, well, let me just turn this on up here. And, oh, come on. There we go. So we have this very, very bright area light. It's bright white right now. And you can see, even with that bright white light in the frame, you can still easily make out what's going on the screen. It's very clearly, and that's because the screen itself is very bright. If I were to do the same thing over here with this panel, it would be a problem. Even with the brightness cranked up all the way, it was very common for any time I did any work during the daytime, when this window would be open, I would actually have to close those blinds and sometimes close the shades because anything that was over on this outer edge here, when I would be working, I couldn't see anything over here because it would be completely washed out by the sunlight from the background. For the AORUS monitor and having these windows back here open, letting sunlight in, I mean, it's literally directly in my line of sight. The exterior sunlight would be, I've not had any problems with it. It's bright enough that even with the direct sunlight coming in, you can still make out what's going on clearly. So as far as the panel brightness goes, absolutely awesome. Anyone that's saying that the panel brightness for this monitor is not up to snuff, they, as much as I hate to say it, they may actually have eye problems, because I don't even use this panel at maximum brightness. I think I have it set to 50% brightness just because of how bright it is. And there's times where I have been working on projects and noticed that it dimmed the panel because I hadn't done anything major in a while to change the screen. Well, the thing about that is it's bright enough that about 50% of the time I don't even bother to trigger it so that it will come back up to full brightness, the full regular brightness, which is, like I said, at half brightness capability. It's just, even when it's dimmed a little bit to, you know, the safety protection is kicked in and it's dimmed somewhat, it's still bright enough to actually work on. You know, unless it's mission critical aspect of a project, I don't even bother triggering it so that it will come back up to full brightness. Now that said, regarding the auto brightness feature, I've seen some people complain about that. Okay, so here's the deal with the auto brightness. I've never had an issue with it. When I first got it, I thought that there was a problem going on because, well, basically I wasn't used to it. I was used to using this monitor, which is a regular LED type of monitor. I can't remember the name. Anyway, whatever, you can look it up. It's the RU7300. With it, even at maximum brightness, you can leave it on indefinitely and so on and so forth. No big whoop. And with this monitor, after a little bit, it automatically dims, and there is no possibility to change it because it's hard-coded internally. And it has to be because it is a protection mechanism for this monitor to keep from doing damage to the LEDs and getting an image burn-in and so on and so forth. Well, at first it was weird. After I've gotten used to it and I know what the behavior of it is, it's not that bad. What the deal is, if there is no major activity on the monitor, it's mostly unchanged, then it will dim the screen after a few minutes. And the screen is actually dimmed right now. If you skip back a little bit in the video and look at the monitor and then jump to right now, you'll notice that there is a very notable drop in the brightness of the monitor, but you can still clearly make out the details in it. As a matter of fact, for comparison, I'll even go in here and get the background lights popping in there. See, there's the background light for the display panel, and then the ceiling fan lights. You can see one of the overhead lights, the recessed lighting, but yet you can still make out the details of what's being shown in the screen. This is after it has had the brightness reduction. So I mean, it's really not that big of an issue, especially once you're used to it. Once you're used to this, half the time you don't even realize that it's dimming the screen. You're just working along doing whatever, and it dims the screen a little bit, and so on and so forth, and you just keep right on working until it shuts the screen off on you, and you're like, hang on, what was going on? And you know, then you realize, oh, I've just been sitting here and it's not been doing anything. That's why it went off. So it's really not that big of an issue. As far as the panel protection goes, you really don't have that big of an issue with it. And when I say the panel protection, this is when you get that the oh so dreaded pop-up message that you need to shut the monitor off and allow the panel protection to process, so on and so forth. Okay, so here's the deal. If you use the monitor continuously, I believe for 4 hours, that's when the message will pop up and tell you you need to shut the monitor down and allow it to process the panel protection. This takes about 5 minutes. You don't have to do it. You can ignore it. The message will go away. And so on and so forth. It's, you know, not a huge ordeal. There is another much more primary panel protection, which I have not encountered it yet, but I also haven't had the monitor running long enough to encounter it. You've had to have the monitor running for 1,300 hours. Well, I guess I'm not going to know that one for quite a while, but when that one pops up and you do the shutdown on it and it does the panel cycle, it runs for approximately an hour. Now, the thing with these two is this. The common one that triggers after you've had it on for 4 hours, the deal with that is it only takes 5 minutes, or possibly less if you haven't even had the monitor on for the full 4 hours, so that it automatically triggers it. If you just regularly turn it off when you take a break and come back, pretty much always by the time you come back, it's always finished with protection processing anyway, and so it basically renews the 4-hour timer, and you've got another 4 hours of uninterrupted play time or work time or whatever. Basically, it's like this. I've never had a problem with it. If I'm in front of the screen for 4 hours continuously, non-stop, I need to take a break anyway, and a 5-minute break isn't that big of a deal. You know, if you're doing a long video stream, you know, doing gamer stuff, you know, maybe a live stream on Twitch or whatever, I mean, how often are you going to have a stream that's running over 4 hours long? And even if you did, okay, let's say you had a stream that was going on for 4 hours, all you have to do is a very simple amount of pre-planning, and then give everybody a heads up. You know, hey, at approximately such and such time, I'm going to take a 5-minute break approximately, and you know, we'll give put up a little timer countdown or something like that on the live stream, so that the people that are hanging around, you know, they can just check back every few minutes to see if you're back yet, and, you know, watch the countdown timer or whatever. A 5-minute countdown timer is not that big of a deal. That you'll see that kind of stuff in big live streams from different companies and such all the time. It's really not that big of a deal. People kind of expect it. And so, you know, little things like that, they're really, really absurdly easy to work around. Just the smallest amount of pre-planning, problem solved. So the deal is, if you're going to be on the monitor actively, continuously for more than 4 hours, then just make sure that you have already come up with a plan on how to deal with a 5-minute break. When the screen protection pops up, that's when you find out a place where you can exit whatever you're doing temporarily, and then tell everybody, hey, I'm going to be taking a 5-minute break, and boom, problem solved. You come back after the panel protection is done, and then you've got another 4 hours of uninterrupted whatever you want to do. So even that is not that big of a deal. It's completely reasonable to take a break for 5 minutes every 4 hours. So, and, you know, just come up with a simple plan, and your workaround is already built in. So easy peasy. As far as the color goes, this monitor's color is amazing, which I talked about that in a previous video I did about it. The color of the monitor is amazing. And we might as well go ahead and talk about this, because I think it's finally got to it. It has reached the maximum dimming level. When you're in normal operation and nothing's going on, very, very little screen activity, so it doesn't keep the screen bright, it dims it down to the minimum possible amount. Okay, so for reference, we'll look over at the 65-inch. Let me back up here a bit. So you can see brightness level is 65-inch, and you can really see that this it's this light right here from the umbrella. That's what's blowing out that screen there across the top, that bright white streak. That's from that soft light. So anyway, you can see this screen here. It's still at maximum brightness. Nothing has changed on the 65-inch. If we go over to the AORUS, you can see it's really dim. It's starting to get kind of hard to make out. If I close in on it, I can't get too close with the 85mm, or it'll go completely out of focus. So you can see the timeline. It's really dark, kind of hard to make out. If I go up to the video, it's really dark, kind of hard to make out. You can't really read too much of the text over here that's next to the area light. But you can still, even with this area light right next to it, if I back up enough to get both of these in frame right here, it's still bright enough that you can make out what's on the screen, even with that super bright area light right next to it. It's hard to make it out, and it's pretty dark. And I would not want to have to work like that. And then, of course, there it goes to complete black. Which is why I kept this video running, because I wanted you to see how long approximately it takes for it to go complete black if there's no activity. Now, if I go over here, and you'll see this just says AORUS. So, if I go over here and do this with one hand, do the little mouse jiggle, and there we go, and it comes back to full brightness. So now you kind of have a full range comparison, how the dimmest that it gets when it's dimming down and when it goes to full black. Now the thing about this is, here's how the auto brightness works while we're talking about that aspect of it. it detects motion on the screen, activity on the screen. So if you're working on a project and you're, say, typing something, there's not going to be a lot of activity registered on the screen. It doesn't look at information provided by your graphics card. It looks at the pixel changes on the screen itself. So in other words, it's displaying information that's being fed to it, and the screen is processing what is being displayed on itself. And if there's not enough activity over the whole surface of it, then it starts a countdown timer to start dimming the screen. Now, well, for example, if I'm playing a video full screen, or actually if I were to just play this video, I can watch this video. If I put it on a loop, it will loop indefinitely, and this screen will stay at maximum brightness until it starts triggering the warning that you need to shut the screen down. And even then, I think it will still stay at maximum brightness. I don't know that there's an automatic shutdown for it. Because when you're fully active, it considers that to be fully active if you have a video playing or something like that. I know I've read stories about people supposedly having an issue with it shutting down in the middle of a game. The only thing I could say about that is it must have been a game that wasn't very active on the screen, because at no point in time have I ever had an issue where there was a reasonable amount of activity on my screen. And let's just say, for instance, we'll use this as a reference. If I had a video taking up that much of the screen real estate playing on the screen, that screen will never dim. And, I've worked on videos, spent several hours doing so, and never had the screen dim because there was always at least enough activity on the screen to keep it going. And, not had anywhere near full screen activity. So the only thing I can think of is the game that they happened to be playing. They were doing something or in an area where there was very little activity over the majority of the screen, and they were, maybe waiting for something, maybe waiting to ambush somebody in a trap, or, whatever. Doesn't really make a difference what the reasoning is. It just wasn't active over a reasonable portion of the screen. The screen will not detect enough activity, and it will start dimming. And that's all there is to it. So yeah, the dimming issue, it's not actually an issue. I suspect that the people that are having those issues with it and claiming that it's terrible, they're probably not properly explaining the full story about what was going on and why it dimmed and the scenario that was happening during the dimming process. For the people that say it's not bright enough, maybe they got a bad screen. I don't know. This screen is just, I don't think I have even ever turned it up beyond 50% brightness. It's just very, very bright. Right now, as a matter of fact, this screen is at maximum brightness, and this is the 65-inch Samsung again. This screen is at maximum brightness, and this screen is at 50% brightness, and it has even started the dimming cycle. And as you can see, if I'll step back here under the ceiling fan. So we have the AORUS, the Samsung. AORUS, Samsung. You can see they're approximately the same brightness. And this is after the AORUS has already done the first stage of dimming. If I go over here and let's just minimize this and maximize it. So I brought it back up to its standard brightness, and then the Samsung, and then the AORUS. As you can see, it's massively brighter. And this isn't even turned up to maximum brightness. This is only half brightness. The screen can get stupidly bright. It's enough that it's very uncomfortable to look at for an extended period of time. I mean, heck, in scenes where there is a lot of bright colors and very little dark areas, I actually welcome it when it starts dimming the screen. So, anyway, good Lord, this has went on for about a half an hour. So, yeah, I think I'll call that a wrap. If there's any other questions about the screen that anybody wants to know, let me know. And hopefully I've covered everything properly. Later.